You're listening to a podcast hosted on the Podcast Matrix. Get your entire podcast library hosted now at whatisthepodcastmatrix.com.
This is Marla, the Green Home Coach, and I've got some quick and easy tips for you today to help you get started with easy, quick ways to warm up the cold spots in your house. So just 5 quick ways that you can consider and put to work, because I know how much I love a cozy, toasty home in the middle of a cold winter's night and how easy it can be to accomplish that with just a few well-chosen products or changes that you can make in your home that are just really going to make a quick impact for you and the people that live in your home. So one of the places that a lot of cold comes into our homes in the winter is the windows. And of course, you say windows, everybody thinks you have to replace the windows to do anything about them. And we can do some quick and easy tips for those. One of my very favorites is insulating curtains and drapes. And you can find these at so many stores. You can find them online, but there's some great choices out there. And those insulating drapes do a great job of cutting down on the drafts in your home. I love them, especially in my bedroom, where they can really just keep it so nice and cozy. Second tip is, if you really have older, leakier windows and you're getting a lot of drafts, you may want to put in the temporary window films. And you adhesive these up to the window frames, and then a lot of them you use a hairdryer to shrink them so they have a tighter fit. They still let in all the light, but they really cut down on the air infiltration that you get from windows, especially if you have older windows. I use these in my condo in St. Louis, and they worked great. I did not want to replace the older windows, and I really needed to do something about them in the winter because my sofa was right back up by the windows, and it got really cold on my back. We'd have this cold draft blowing down our necks and our back. And that window film, it worked just so neatly. It was awesome. That's just those two combined can be a great way to really take what can be a colder, leakier window and to warm it up for the winter. Tip number 1 and tip number 2 are all about your windows. So tip number 3 can be about your windows, but it can also be about your doors. And this is just caulking and sealing up the gaps. So caulking under the window jambs and where the windows meet with the framing and the drywall. A lot of times we get cracks in there and they let in a lot of extra air. And that's what's usually making us cold, is that leaky air that's coming in, and then you get cold air blowing on you, and that does make us cold. If you're not confident caulking and sealing, call a handy person and ask them if they can help you out. I cannot draw a caulk bead very well, so I definitely need help with this one. You can also do weather stripping around your windows and in your doors to seal up the cracks again. So I know sometimes on your door you can see a little bit of daylight underneath. Well, if you can see daylight, then there's cold coming in. And there's also a dollar bill trick you can try in your door if you just look it up online. Dollar bill in the door. If you can pull that dollar bill out, then your door is not sealing very tightly. And if it's not sealing very tightly, then guess what's coming in? The cold air. So some new weather stripping. You can put new sweeps on the bottom of your door, and those will both help keep that cold air out. And lastly, to help stop the drafts, this is one that my grandparents used all the time, and that's using one of those draft snakes. Although theirs looked like a dachshund, but long, skinny body. Just had a dog's head on it for fun. But these are a great way to you put them at the bottom of the door, and they stop the air from coming in under the door. Now, if you got a lot of air coming in other parts of the door, not going to help as much. But since cold air sinks towards the bottom of your home, coming in under the door is really logical. So those door stops, those draft stoppers really can help to cut down on the draft. So hey, check it out, see which one of these tips works for your home, and leave me a comment. I want to know what worked for you. Have a great green day.
Being green is about more than saving on your electric bill or doing your part to protect natural resources. It is about getting a safe and healthier life for you and your family without sacrificing style, quality, or budget. This is a movement to provide all of us with clean air to breathe and water to drink, safe, healthy food to eat and places to live, and energy to run the places where we live, learn, play, and work. Your go-to information source for a healthier home and world. Hosted by Marla Esser-Close, your green home coach. This is the Green Gab Podcast.
This is Marla, the Green Home Coach, chatting with my iPig. Yeah, y'all haven't heard that one in a while. I knew it'd make him laugh. That is intellectual partner in green. And are you a sidekick?
I guess I am.
I think you're in charge.
No, I'm definitely not in charge. I know better.
You're Tony, right? Tony Pratt.
Tony Pratt from the Sound Room. How are you today, Marla?
You know, being here always makes me better. It always makes me smile.
Well, it's because we're in good company.
That is so true. We spend so much time chatting, we have to remember to get the podcast recorded.
What podcast?
Oh, right.
Do we record?
Yeah, we record.
Oh, that's why Sam's here.
Yep, that's why Sam's here. Sam's our technician, by the way, for those of you that hear us talk about Sam. And he makes all this magic happen for us.
He makes us sound really good.
We're blessed to have you, Sam. Thank you.
You're the man.
Today, we wanted to dive in to some more cool stuff about a house and helping people to understand some of the terminology that may get bantered about if they're in a remodel or building new. And I wanted to really hone in on energy efficiency.
Oh, actually, that's a pretty good topic. That's a very important topic,
That's a pretty good topic, really.
Well, you know what? I can't tell people, my God, we're going to jump in head first and talk all scientific today.
Well, it does kind of go along with some of the episodes we've done on building science, because this is where it really all comes together, is in the benefit of energy efficiency, right?
This is rubber meets the road here.
It is. And this is where I think most people, when they think things to do to their house, the first thing they think is energy efficiency.
Well, yeah. Whether it's appliances, whether it's HVAC, or heating, cooling for the lay people, you hear a lot of energy efficiency, whether it's coming out of Department of Energy, whether it's on regular commercials.
Utilities.
Utility companies, they all talk about energy efficiency.
They do. And I think energy efficiency, if nothing else, gets talked about a lot because oftentimes it's the easiest thing to see for making changes, because you can impact your utility bills as one big benefit. But I think the benefit that's becoming much more evident to people is comfort. And we are creatures of comfort.
Well, sure. The idea used to be, if you wanted to cut your utility bills, what'd you do? You drop the thermostat 5-10 degrees and put on a sweater?
Right.
Now,
I remember those days back in the 70s. I know, I just dated myself.
Right. But now, if the house is built properly and you have the proper equipment,
you don't need to
do it.
Right.
So why don't we talk about that?
Well, and that's a great place to start, because I think when we were talking building science, we talked about how the building envelope, or the structure, the shell of the house, is really like our skin is to people. And It's what protects the house and its residents from the elements, from outdoors, and keeps the inside comfortable so that the residents that live there have a better living experience, a healthier and a safer one. So, because I don't know anybody that really wants to live wet and cold inside their home. And I know that sounds extreme, but I'm making a point, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you have to look at the house as, if you look at the framing of the house, that is our bone structure.
That is the bones.
If you look at how the house is wrapped and sheathed in brick or siding or whatever around it, that's more like the skin. Now, the trick is the science that comes into play here is the air movement. And air is always going to want to go from hot to cold.
Oh, we got to remember back to basic science. Okay.
And from
Heat
wet
flow.
And from wet to dry.
To dry.
So the idea is the barrier that we put on the outside of the house has to keep the hot air out when it's cold inside, and has to keep the moist air out when it's dry inside.
Yeah. And that's a lot to remember, but this is why we have energy efficient green consultants and builders that understand building science. And I would caution folks, if your builder or remodeler doesn't understand these basic concepts, you may want to have some further conversations with them. A lot of times understand that these conversations may not come up with the builder or remodeler because they may think it's too technical for a layperson. And it's not, folks. This is pretty basic science. If you remember back to grade school and high school, it's not as scary as it seems. But the end result is what we as consumers really need to make sure that we're asking for, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it starts from something very simple in the framing process. Just asking the builder or the framing contractor, hey, do you caulk your joints? Do you seal everything?
Okay, so what does that mean? So a caulk, which kind of looks like...
We all see the caulks too.
A cross between toothpaste and glue.
We've all seen tubes of caulk in the hardware store. Basically, when they're putting together the walls and they do the framing, whenever you have two walls joined together...
Or two surfaces.
Right. It creates a seam.
Right.
So the more high-energy efficient builder is going to seal that so airflow and moisture can't get in through the seam.
What's so important about that is sealing all those seams is like sewing up the seams or zipping your down coat.
Correct.
You can have the best down coat in the world, but if you're leaving it unzipped...
Or you have a hole in it.
You're not going to be able to take advantage of the air sealing and the insulation. So this is a fact that I think is really starting to hit home with more people is air sealing and insulation go hand in glove, and the two work together.
Correct.
But they need to be thought of together. And I know an awful lot of people, when they're retrofitting in their homes, often think of insulation, but don't know necessarily to ask about air sealing. And that's the first piece.
Right. When you seal the house, you're keeping the airflow from moving through.
Right.
Really, the insulation is supposed to block the air from moving out and moving in as well. But if there's a seal that the air can get into, more air is going to get through the insulation. It's not going to be as effective.
Yeah, so your air seal and insulate is important. And your structure consists of the walls, the bones, or the framing, as you said, insulation and air sealing. It also consists of some kind of a barrier to keep water out of the walls.
A moisture barrier.
And some kind of sheathing.
Correct.
Brick, siding. Again, to keep the elements out as well as to look beautiful. And then, of course, windows and doors play an important part of the envelope of the home.
True, because anytime you cut a hole in a wall, what you have done is you gave air and moisture a chance and a pathway to come in.
Right, and windows are a conundrum, aren't they?
They are. Well, so are doors too, but they're necessary. They're necessary evils.
We as people need views. We need natural light. So we're always balancing this trade-off between enough windows for the psychological benefits, yet not too many windows that we're taking away from the science and from the efficiency of the wall construction.
Correct.
So it is a balance point. The cool things about people that are in the know, like green and energy efficient consultants, is that there are formulas that can be used. And this is kind of techy, but these formulas can help to determine the best window-wall ratio. And better yet, they can even take it down to which direction that wall is on. So a north-facing wall may have a different window and wall ratio than a south-facing wall. And if you really want to get into optimizing your efficiency for a home, you can get into that level. A lot of times that's way more than we're going to get into. But it can get that deep.
Well, it's all about the mathematics of building, right?
Yeah, that's the building science. Well, okay, so we've just kind of scratched the surface with energy efficiency. And I want to talk more. We'll finish up on the structure and then the systems, what goes inside. So
cool.
Join us after break and we'll talk a bit more. Oh, wait, Gab.
Looking for a straightforward user interface and a cost-effective, feature-filled multi-track recording software? Call off the search! Mixcraft from Acoustica has exactly what you're looking for. It's time to include reliable audio creation and editing software with real punch into your projects. Check out Mixcraft now over at acoustica.com/Mixcraft and start a new generation of audio creation and editing today.
Shield was introduced in 1965 in an edition of Strange Tales featuring Nick Fury. It was billed inside comic books as
the greatest action thriller of all time. And it's safe to say that secret acronymed international intelligence collection endeavors would never be the same. Another, even greater episodic series is ready to take the greatest action thriller of all time mantle. And we hope you'll be listening. Don't miss the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, reviewing each and every episode of ABC's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. bullet point by bullet point. Check it all out right now at agentsofshieldpodcast.com. That's agentsofshieldpodcast.com.
Hey, back on the Green Gab. This is Marla.
And Tony.
Tony. And we're gabbing around today about green homes, green living, and green companies. And actually, we're just really talking about green homes in full transparency, not to mention our crazy lives. Oh, my gosh.
Mostly
Someday
family.
we're going to have to do a blooper reel.
Oh, no. Though the stories I tell, people already kind of know about them.
Yeah,
so.
well, that's all good. Anywho, I feel like we're in a dollhouse today talking about taking apart the house.
That's a good analogy for it.
Isn't it?
It's like being in a little bitty tiny house and just not a tiny house, but a miniature house.
Well, I used to have, actually, back in a former company, we had a dollhouse that we had labeled with all the different components of what would go into a green home. And we'd use that in shows, and we'd use it when we'd go talk to school kids. And it was a great visual.
Oh, yeah, it's a great way to demo everything.
I really ought to think about doing that again now that I say that out loud. Funny how those things come back to you, huh? So we'd almost gotten through the house. We got the walls, and then talking about the wall assemblies and how important that is. And then kind of the same really goes true for the bottom, which, depending where you live, might be a slab, might be a crawl space, might be here in St. Louis, we have basements mostly.
Full basement, right.
Which I love because we have extra space. But a lot of people don't insulate their basements or the rim joist, which, okay, techie word, which is where the top of the house, or not the top of the house, the bottom of the house sits on the top of the foundation or the basement wall. And there's another big seam there, right?
Well, and a lot of builders have started automatically just doing spray foam insulation on that. That's
thank goodness.
starting to become a large trend.
A standard practice, yeah. That is, and that's definitely a best practice.
Oh, absolutely. You get so much more benefit out of it if you can spray foam that versus like a Owens Corning fiberglass insulation kind of deal.
Yeah. There's lots of options out there for different companies that offer great solutions. But again, the whole idea of seal and insulate does extend to the basement. And I know a lot of people that will insulate underneath the floor of the basement or the slab, which keeps that floor much more comfortable.
There are a lot of people that go the next step and wrap the foundation itself in a foundation blanket.
Yes. There's all different kinds of ways to do this, but you can retrofit with a foundation blanket. You can build out the walls and put in insulation. You can also buy different products that go in when the foundation's being poured. So
there's a lot of
different
ways to do it.
Okay, so lastly, let's go up top. And since the heat in our homes escapes up, as I'm making my hand signals like everybody can see,
I can.
This is super important because if your attic, and most homes have attics, is not both air sealed and insulated.
Oh, that is your biggest opportunity for what we would call heat transfer.
For savings.
Absolutely.
And for comfort.
Absolutely.
And if your home is uncomfortable and your energy bills are high, this is the first place to look.
Go up to the attic and you can tell right away, do I need insulation?
A lot of the utility companies will offer a free or discounted energy audit, as well as financial assistance in low interest rate loans or other financing packages to help address this issue. It is that critical. And this is very, very common in many of our homes. And this is where probably the biggest bang for our buck comes, is getting that attic well insulated and well sealed. And I know, like when I'm down in Oklahoma, they have a lot of HVAC, heating and cooling systems that are in the attic. And if that attic isn't conditioned, that's sealed and insulated.
That's another problem right there.
Yeah.
Because if you're putting a furnace or an air conditioning HVAC unit up in an attic, now you're putting it in this super warm environment.
Or cold in the winter.
Or cold environment. Yeah. And all it's going to do is run and run and run and
work harder.
It's going to work harder. It's going to use more energy. It's going to increase your bills. And it's going to fail sooner.
So one of the things we look for in a green certification or an energy efficient certification like Energy Star is the heating and cooling unit in conditioned space. And by conditioned space, we mean a place that is treated as a living space, even if there's not finished quarters. So is it inside of the insulated and air-sealed envelope of the house? And that's exactly why. Because it doesn't have to work as hard. And it's going to give a lot better efficiency and do a lot more of what it was intended to do when it's in a good operating environment.
Right. That is the trick.
Kind of like leaving your pet in a car. Sorry, that's a bad analogy.
Very bad analogy.
But it heats up in an attic really fast.
Right. Especially you figure in St. Louis, it could be 100 degrees outside. Well, it's 120, 130 in that attic because you have no airflow and that heat is trapped.
We have some because attics are typically vented. And there's two types of attics, right? There's vented and there's completely sealed.
But even if they're vented, it's not enough.
Right.
You got a guy up, I've seen it many times, guys working in the attic on a hot summer day.
Yeah.
And he's not up there long.
Sweat pouring off of him. So this is a biggie. And if there is one thing that I can stress in all homes, unless you know that your attic is well sealed and has plenty of insulation, and by plenty, I mean at least an R38, which is a measure of insulation capability. That's typically about a foot or more of loose fill insulation. This is worth getting stuff checked out because this makes a big difference.
Absolutely. You'll see a larger return on your pocketbook with your energy bills than anywhere else. So
the next spot is heating and cooling, which dovetails right in. And a lot of times units are oversized, but if we're already in a house, most of us don't want to replace a unit just because it's oversized. The key is not to have a system that's mismatched with the house. Right. And a professional heating and cooling company, especially on the construction side, they're going to look at your house and they're going to do the calculations. And sometimes it's not one gigantic unit. It becomes maybe you have a 2-story house, two right-sized units, and they can control it into more of a zoned heating and cooling. Yeah, the one thing I see oftentimes with this is that heating and cooling contractors are not aware of the extra energy efficient measures that have been taken in the home, and they don't take that into account in their calculations. And therefore, they end up calculating for a much bigger heating and cooling load because they think the house needs a lot more help than it really might. Right. So I encourage people to make sure that their heating and cooling contractor knows the specifics about their home, especially if it's a new home, and can take those into account when they're running the sizings. Well, and I would think, too, if you are building a house and you know it's going to be a more energy efficient house. Or renovating, right? Those specs are usually up front with the builder to the contractor. Right. So they know. But if you're just, replacing units and you've had a lot of work done and you've had insulation put in and you've sealed the house, you do need to make sure that your HVAC contractor understands all this so he can really effectively do the calculations, because he's only going to calculate what he can see. Right. And I've had this issue with my home because I've done some energy efficient upgrades. And they're bits and pieces. It's not been wholesale ones, but it's enough that it needs to be taken into account. It can skew the calculations. It can skew the calculations. And I've sealed my ductwork, which is another big piece inside of the heating and cooling world. Again, we want air to go where it's supposed to go. Not everybody says, else. What's the big deal if it leaks out in my house? My house needs to have that air anyway. But think of drinking through a straw with holes poked in it. Mm-hmm. It's not a very efficient way to drink. Well, and the same thing happens with our ductwork. It was just like our cooking episode. Radiant heat. Extra heat just going everywhere else. And there it goes. And hard to believe that has gone so fast, but we'll be back to talk more. Oh, wait, Gab.
Wouldn't it be cool if your advertising could last forever? It can with perpetual advertising. Here's how it works. Magazine, radio, and television ads are efforts that people might see or hear once, and then they're lost forever. Perpetual advertising provides you with the chance for repeat exposure and replayability weeks, months, even years after it's originally inserted inside a podcast. So even after your advertising is included in a podcast years ago, those efforts are still impactful, providing you with true return on investment. Real impact, thanks to perpetual advertising. Are you ready to change the way you and your company or organization advertises? Find out more and launch a unique perpetual advertising effort right now by visiting twoguystalking.com/sponsors.
Hi, this is Art Maines from Scammercast.com, where we educate, inform, and protect our elders and those who care for them on the Two Guys Talking podcast network.
Hey, podcast fans. Ever wanted to learn sign language? How about learning more about the deaf and hard of hearing culture? Well, the time and effort has come to allow you to do just that. Don't miss the Interpreter's Toolbox podcast from Two Guys Talking. Great sign language vocabulary lessons, contests, stories, and more are waiting for you after you watch this new video podcast. Check out InterpreterToolbox.com for more details and get cash and prizes for your comments now. It's all about life. InterpreterToolbox.com.
Hey, back on the Green Gab with Tony and Marla. We're talking energy efficiency today, which sounds really boring until you do it with us.
Yeah, we can make any topic fun.
I'm really good with that. And energy efficiency is, I think to a lot of people, kind of the foundation principle of the whole green home idea. And it's a great place to start because everything can build from there.
Well, it was the easiest to market because it was the easiest benefit to first see. Lower utility bills. Yeah, everybody likes that idea.
And energy efficiency was around, I don't know, how many of our listeners are old enough to remember, but back in the 70s when we had the first whole energy efficiency movement. But what was interesting is that a lot of people didn't take into account the holistic nature of the home and sometimes made choices for energy efficiency that weren't so great for other factors in a house, maybe for moisture management or for ventilation. And
true.
So that's one of the things I love about the whole idea of green homes is the holistic approach, so that any given efficiency or set of practices or ways of thinking is a part of it.
Right. It's not just how the house is built, but it's what goes into the house.
Yeah.
And then once the house is completed, how the house is operated by the homeowners.
Yep. And that's near and dear to my heart, as you know, since I came
yes,
into from the owner education side. So we've kind of been through the structure of the house, the skin, or what we call the building envelope, and then the heating and cooling systems, which along with hot water are really the biggest systems in a home and our biggest opportunities to impact being efficient.
Right.
And, you can choose more efficient traditional fixtures, equipment, but you also may choose something that's a whole different technology.
Sure,
like
you could go like
solar water heater, for instance.
Water heater. You could go a geothermal.
Yeah.
You could go a tankless water heater. There's a lot of different choices.
But you don't have to do that. This is part of what I have. So many people ask me, well, if I put a geothermal heating and cooling system in, then I'm green, right? And it's like, well, definitely one piece is green, and that's awesome. But that's not the only way you can do it. You can still achieve a home that is very green and balanced and comfortable and safe and healthy with more traditional systems like forced air heating and cooling. And a house that looks just like all the other houses in the neighborhood, if that's what you want.
Well, the big thing is not every system is made for every situation.
Right. You need to have choice.
You have to sit there and say, this is the house, this is the lot I sit on, this is, you have to take everything on the site and the house design and then say, these are the things I want. How do I get there?
And that's why a team approach is so critical.
Absolutely.
When you are planning a new build or a renovation, you want to have all those different trains of thought into the design side of it. So you want an architect or a design principal. You want the key equipment people in there that are going to be working with and installing and sizing those equipments. You want the builder or the remodeler. You want all those people as well as the homeowners or the people that are going to be living in the house, because all those different sides need to be represented in what comes out the end product.
Well, not only that, if you have more of the team approach, then all it takes is that one expert to say, I know you wanted to do this,
right,
but you can't because of that. And it could be something that the builder or the architect missed because they don't have that specialty knowledge that maybe the HVAC person does, who sees the one little detail that says you can't go this route, you have to go that route.
So like everything else in our life, the more brains we can put on it, the better.
Absolutely.
And the more time we spend planning a really great end result up front, the better chance we have of working the plan successfully, getting to where we want to get with less time and effort spent having to rework it all. So back to plan the work and work the plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Ooh, there's a social media tidbit. Well, the last component of energy efficiency that we really haven't talked about is what I call plug load. So all the other electric things that we have in our homes, and boy, are those adding up.
Oh, yes.
So lighting is a huge one. Oh my gosh, this is so easy to impact, folks. And so many of us are not taking advantage of this.
LED lighting.
LED. LED stands for, oh, you don't remember.
No.
Light emitting diode.
That's right.
Well, you know where they started, right?
Well, I know we've been dealing with them in the electronics industry for quite some time.
And automotives, yeah. So the little blinky lights you see on your TV or your car oftentimes are LEDs. And then what the industry figured out was how to take that concept, and it's actually almost like it's an electronics versus like a traditional incandescent light has gas in it, and it actually fires up, and that's why there's so much heat that comes off of them. Because only about give or take, roughly 5% of the energy that goes into a traditional incandescent light bulb actually comes out as light. That's why I could bake a cake with an easy bake oven when I was a kid.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
There wasn't a real motor in there. It was a light bulb.
It was a light bulb. Either, I can't remember if it was a 60 watt or 100 watt. But yeah, we could bake a cake with a light bulb. So lighting's a great place to start. And LED bulbs have come way, way, way down in price. Typically, most people find they start recouping their cost within a few months just by their savings on their electricity.
Once again, law of unintended consequences, you're cutting heat as well.
Right. So you're going to cut back on your air conditioning bill too. So you get a twofer. So there is no reason. Don't even wait till your incandescents burn out because they have to go in the landfill anyway. Just do it. It's just not worth waiting. You're just paying money you don't have to. So, and if you're remodeling, you can get fixtures that are optimized and are even Energy Star fixtures, and they look awesome.
Oh yeah,
gosh, I think some amazing ones.
Pretty soon, those will be the only fixtures you can get are LED fixtures.
It's coming fast, yeah. So appliances is another one. We actually had a podcast a few weeks ago talking about energy efficient appliances. This is another place to make a big impact. What's the one biggest appliance you think makes a big difference?
Oh, I would say either dishwasher or a stove or oven. Which one?
Refrigerator.
Oh, that's right, refrigerator.
Yeah. And I have a teenage son who likes to open both doors of the refrigerator and stand there for a while, deciding what he's going to eat. I know people are laughing.
He's a thinker.
Yeah, well, he's a teenager. Having an energy efficient refrigerator at least helps, but it's running all the time.
Right.
So it's constantly running, so the efficiency in it is huge. And actually, refrigerators today are so much more efficient than the ones manufactured 10, 20 years ago. Even if you don't buy an Energy Star, you're likely going to get a big step up.
Yeah, I think Joan said it was over like 130% efficient nowadays.
Yeah. And
just crazy.
This is why the recycling programs exist, to get rid of your old refrigerator, because the old ones are big time gobblers. And folks, I know you feel like you should reuse that old refrigerator that's 20 or 30 years old and put it in the garage, but you're hitting a double whammy. Not only are you using an energy guzzler to begin with, you're also putting it in a space where it's got to work up to twice as hard because it's not in a heated or cooled space.
Right.
So it's a double whammy. It sounds great to have one in your garage, but it's not such a great idea. If you got room in the laundry room, you might actually be better off to buy an inexpensive second refrigerator. Run the dollars because it's worth thinking about. So
good advice.
And then we got all the stuff we plug in. I think this is the one that behavior comes into being, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's a fun conversation, though.
Right. And we're going to we've got a couple of podcasts on home technology and how they can affect behaviors, and we'll be doing some more. But that's the other big way to affect your loads. And that really wraps it up for energy efficiency.
Automating behavior.
So energy efficiency basics all in 27 minutes. How's that?
Not bad.
Green Gab is on Facebook, so check us out there. You can follow our episodes and get our episode information as well as the links that we talk about here on the show. So Facebook/thegreengab.com, I believe is
correct.
Our handle, if that's correct. But hey, this has been a ton of fun. It always goes so fast. Thank you for joining us on The Green Gab today, and make it a blessed day.
That wraps this episode of the Green Gab podcast. Ready to use what you've learned? Get the show notes with all the resources mentioned in this episode, plus 9 simple, straightforward, low to no cost ways to improve the health of your home and world today at everydaygreenhome.com. Be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, being green is easier and more affordable than you think.